There are moments in life where the person you love most becomes a stranger right before your eyes. I'm Megan Carter, 32 years old, and 3 months ago I stood in the living room of what I thought was our home, 6 months pregnant, tears streaming down my face, while my husband of 4 years pointed at the door and said the words that shattered everything. Get out. This is my house. You don't belong here anymore. I was holding my ultrasound photo, the one showing our daughter, the baby we'd planned, the baby he'd celebrated just weeks before, and now he was throwing me out like garbage. Why? Because his mother had convinced him I'd trapped him with the pregnancy, that I was using him for his money, that I'd never loved him, just his financial security. None of it was true. But in his mother's web of lies, truth didn't matter, and my husband chose to believe her instead of me. So I left, 6 months pregnant, with 2 suitcases, humiliated, broken, devastated. What my husband didn't know, what he'd somehow never bothered to confirm in 4 years of marriage, was that the house wasn't his. It was mine, completely mine. I'd bought it 3 years before we met. My name, my mortgage, my down payment, my property. He'd lived in my house for 4 years, thinking it was his. And he'd just illegally evicted the actual owner while she was pregnant with his child. 2 weeks after he kicked me out, after I'd secured a lawyer and gathered every document I needed, I did something he never saw coming. I showed up at my house with the police and a court order, and I gave him 24 hours to leave my property. The look on his face when he realized he'd just made the worst mistake of his life was worth every tear I'd cried. Before I tell you about the moment he realized the house was mine, before I tell you about his mother's face when she learned the truth, before I tell you about the court hearing that gave me everything I asked for, I need you to do something. If this story is already making your blood boil, if you've ever been thrown away by someone who promised to love you, if you've ever been underestimated and then proved everyone wrong, hit that like button right now. Do it for every woman who was counted out and came back stronger. Subscribe to this channel for stories about women who documented everything, who knew their rights, and who used the legal system to get justice. We don't just survive here, we win. Drop a comment. Tell me your city, your country, and your story if you have one. I read every single comment. We're warriors here, the ones who are knocked down and got back up swinging. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. To understand how someone could kick out a pregnant woman from her own house, you need to understand how we got here. And why did my husband never bother to check whose name was on the deed? Let me tell you about the man I thought I married. I met Ryan Carter 5 years ago at a friend's barbecue. I was 27, he was 29. I'd just been promoted to senior project manager at a tech firm, making $90,000 a year. I'd bought my house 2 years earlier, a 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood in Phoenix, $280,000. I'd put $60,000 down, money I'd saved since college. I was proud of that house. It was mine, my accomplishment, my security. Ryan was in sales, made decent money, around $80,000. He was charming, funny, and attentive. We clicked immediately. Started dating. Within 6 months, he said he was falling in love with me. A year into dating, his apartment lease was ending. He asked if he could move in with me temporarily while he looked for a new place. I said yes, because I loved him, because it felt like the next natural step. He moved in, paid me $800 a month for his share of expenses. But here's what happened, and this is important. He started referring to it as our house, as our home. I noticed, but I didn't correct him because it felt petty. It did feel like our home at that point. 6 months later, he proposed. Small, intimate proposal, just us. It was perfect. I said yes. We got married in a small ceremony, 70 people, nothing fancy, but beautiful. We were happy, or at least I was happy. After the wedding, Ryan's attitude started to shift in small ways. He'd make financial decisions without consulting me, buy expensive things and say, "It's fine, I make good money." I'd remind him we had a mortgage to pay. He'd say, "I've got it covered." But here's the thing, he wasn't covering it. I was paying the mortgage out of my account, the same account I'd always used. He just assumed it was being handled somehow. In year 2 of marriage, his mother, Patricia, started visiting more often. She'd never liked me. From the beginning, she made it clear I wasn't good enough for her son. Patricia was a widow. Ryan's father had died when Ryan was 20. She raised him alone, and in her mind, no woman would ever be worthy of her perfect son. At family dinners, she'd make little comments. "Megan, you're looking tired. Are you taking care of yourself? Ryan needs a wife who can keep up." Or, "I hope you're saving money. Ryan deserves a comfortable life. Not everyone can provide that." The irony. I was the one providing the comfortable life, the house, the stability, but she didn't know that, and neither, apparently, did Ryan. Year 3, Patricia's involvement in our marriage intensified. She'd call Ryan daily, come over unannounced, criticize how I kept the house, how I cooked, how I dressed. Ryan would defend me sometimes, but mostly he'd say, "That's just how she is. She means well." She didn't mean well. She meant to drive a wedge between us, and slowly it was working. Year 4, this year, I got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but we'd talked about kids. We wanted them eventually. When I saw the positive test, I was nervous but excited. I told Ryan that night. He picked me up and spun me around. "We're having a baby! This is amazing!" For 2 weeks, everything was perfect. He was attentive, excited, and already planning nursery colors. Then I made the mistake of telling Patricia. We invited Patricia over for dinner to tell her about the pregnancy. I was 12 weeks along. The first trimester is almost over. We'd seen the heartbeat. Everything looked healthy. I made her favorite meal, set the table nicely. Ryan was beaming with excitement. We sat down. Ryan said, "Mom, we have news. Megan's pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." I expected surprise, joy, congratulations. Instead, Patricia's face went cold. She put down her fork slowly, looked at me with something like disgust. "Pregnant. Convenient." Ryan said, "Mom, what do you mean?" She said, "I mean, your wife has been married to you for 3 years, and suddenly, right when you're doing well financially, she gets pregnant? Don't you find that suspicious?" I said, "It wasn't planned, but we're happy." She said, "I'm sure you are. Now you've got him trapped." Ryan said, "Mom, that's enough." But she wasn't done. "Ryan, I need to talk to you, alone, about some concerns I have." I excused myself, went upstairs, sat on the bed with my hand on my barely showing belly, feeling sick. They talked for an hour. When Patricia left, Ryan came upstairs. He looked troubled. I said, "What did she say?" He said, "Nothing. She's just worried. You know how she is." But something had shifted. He was distant, distracted. Over the next week, he started questioning things. "Megan, how much do you make again? When did you buy this house exactly? Do you have debt I don't know about?" I answered everything honestly, but his questions felt accusatory, like he was looking for evidence of something. 2 weeks later, Patricia came over when I wasn't home. I came back from a doctor's appointment to find her and Ryan in the kitchen speaking in low voices. They stopped when I walked in. Patricia gave me a fake smile. "Megan, dear, how was the doctor?" I said, "Fine, baby's healthy." She said, "That's good. After all, this baby is very important to your future security." I felt my face get hot. "What's that supposed to mean?" She said, "Oh, nothing. I'm just saying. A baby guarantees certain things. Financial support, security. You understand." Ryan said nothing, just looked at the floor. I said, "Patricia, I need you to leave." She smiled. "Of course. Ryan, call me later." After she left, I confronted him. "What is she telling you? Why are you letting her talk to me like that?" He said, "She's just concerned. She thinks you might have gotten pregnant on purpose to secure your future." I stared at him. "Are you serious? We're married. We talked about having kids. This is insane." He said, "Did we, though? I remember you saying someday. I don't remember saying now was the right time." I said, "Ryan, the baby is here. Whether it was planned or not, we're having a baby. Your baby. Are you happy about this or not?" He said, "I don't know what I am anymore. My mom's got me thinking about a lot of things." That was the beginning of the end. Over the next month, Patricia's poison worked deeper. She'd call Ryan constantly, come over whenever I wasn't there, feed him more lies. "She's probably spending your money on herself. She's going to take you for everything in child support when you eventually divorce him for someone wealthier." Ryan started treating me differently. Cold, suspicious, resentful. At 16 weeks pregnant, halfway through, things came to a head. 20 weeks pregnant. I was showing significantly now, a clear baby bump. We'd found out we were having a girl. I'd picked out a name, Lily. Ryan had agreed it was beautiful, but his enthusiasm felt forced. Patricia had been over constantly. Sometimes I'd come home and she'd be in my house, rearranging things, going through my mail, acting like she owned the place. One Friday evening, I came home from work exhausted. I was having back pain, swollen ankles, normal pregnancy stuff, but uncomfortable. Ryan and Patricia were both in the living room, waiting for me. I knew immediately something was wrong. The way they were sitting, the way they looked at me. I said, "What's going on?" Ryan stood up. He looked angry, angrier than I've ever seen him. He said, "I know what you've been doing." I said, "Doing? What are you talking about?" Patricia stood too. She looked triumphant. "We know you've been hiding money, lying about finances, taking advantage of my son." I said, "That's insane. I haven't been hiding anything." Ryan said, "Really? Because according to my mother's accountant friend, there's no way you can afford this house on your salary while also spending the way you do." I said, "Are you kidding? I pay the mortgage. I pay most of our bills. I pay for groceries, utilities, everything. You contribute $800 a month. That doesn't even cover half." He said, "The mortgage on this house is like $1,800 a month. If you're paying it, where's the rest of your money going?" I said, "Savings, retirement, normal financial planning." He didn't believe me. Patricia had gotten so deep in his head that he couldn't see reason anymore. At 20 weeks pregnant, halfway through, things came to a head. 20 weeks pregnant. I was showing significantly now, a clear baby bump. We'd found out we were having a girl. I'd picked out a name, Lily. Ryan had agreed it was beautiful, but his enthusiasm felt forced. Patricia had been over constantly. Sometimes I'd come home and she'd be in my house, rearranging things, going through my mail, acting like she owned the place. One Friday evening, I came home from work exhausted. I was having back pain, swollen ankles, normal pregnancy stuff, but uncomfortable. Ryan and Patricia were both in the living room, waiting for me. I knew immediately something was wrong. The way they were sitting, the way they looked at me. I said, "What's going on?" Ryan stood up. He looked angry, angrier than I've ever seen him. He said, "I know what you've been doing." I said, "Doing? What are you talking about?" Patricia stood too. She looked triumphant. "We know you've been hiding money, lying about finances, taking advantage of my son." I said, "That's insane. I haven't been hiding anything." Ryan said, "Really? Because according to my mother's accountant friend, there's no way you can afford this house on your salary while also spending the way you do." I said, "Are you kidding? I pay the mortgage. I pay most of our bills. I pay for groceries, utilities, everything. You contribute $800 a month. That doesn't even cover half. He said, the mortgage on this house is like $1,800 a month. If you're paying it, where's the rest of your money going? I said, savings, retirement, normal financial planning. He didn't believe me. Patricia had gotten so deep in his head that he couldn't see reason anymore. At 20 weeks pregnant, halfway through, things came to a head. 20 weeks pregnant. I was showing significantly now, a clear baby bump. We'd found out we were having a girl. I'd picked out a name, Lily. Ryan had agreed it was beautiful, but his enthusiasm felt forced. Patricia had been over constantly. Sometimes I'd come home and she'd be in my house, rearranging things, going through my mail, acting like she owned the place. One Friday evening, I came home from work exhausted. I was having back pain, swollen ankles, normal pregnancy stuff, but uncomfortable. Ryan and Patricia were both in the living room, waiting for me. I knew immediately something was wrong. The way they were sitting, the way they looked at me. I said, "What's going on?" Ryan stood up. He looked angry, angrier than I've ever seen him. He said, "I know what you've been doing." I said, "Doing? What are you talking about?" Patricia stood too. She looked triumphant. "We know you've been hiding money, lying about finances, taking advantage of my son." I said, "That's insane. I haven't been hiding anything." Ryan said, "Really? Because according to my mother's accountant friend, there's no way you can afford this house on your salary while also spending the way you do." I said, "Are you kidding? I pay the mortgage. I pay most of our bills. I pay for groceries, utilities, everything. You contribute $800 a month. That doesn't even cover half." He said, the mortgage on this house is like $1,800 a month. If you're paying it, where's the rest of your money going? I said, savings, retirement, normal financial planning. He didn't believe me. Patricia had gotten so deep in his head that he couldn't see reason anymore. At 20 weeks pregnant, halfway through, things came to a head. 20 weeks pregnant. I was showing significantly now, a clear baby bump. We'd found out we were having a girl. I'd picked out a name, Lily. Ryan had agreed it was beautiful, but his enthusiasm felt forced. Patricia had been over constantly. Sometimes I'd come home and she'd be in my house, rearranging things, going through my mail, acting like she owned the place. One Friday evening, I came home from work exhausted. I was having back pain, swollen ankles, normal pregnancy stuff, but uncomfortable. Ryan and Patricia were both in the living room, waiting for me. I knew immediately something was wrong. The way they were sitting, the way they looked at me. I said, "What's going on?" Ryan stood up. He looked angry, angrier than I've ever seen him. He said, "I know what you've been doing." I said, "Doing? What are you talking about?" Patricia stood too. She looked triumphant. "We know you've been hiding money, lying about finances, taking advantage of my son." I said, "That's insane. I haven't been hiding anything." Ryan said, "Really? Because according to my mother's accountant friend, there's no way you can afford this house on your salary while also spending the way you do." I said, "Are you kidding? I pay the mortgage. I pay most of our bills. I pay for groceries, utilities, everything. You contribute $800 a month. That doesn't even cover half." He said, the mortgage on this house is like $1,800 a month. If you're paying it, where's the rest of your money going? I said, savings, retirement, normal. Jennifer was fierce. Your husband kicked you out while pregnant, and his mother was involved? Oh, honey, we're gonna take him to school. She explained. In Arizona, pregnancy is considered a vulnerable state. What he did, evicting you from your own home while pregnant, could be considered domestic abuse. Not physical, but legal abuse. Exploitation. We can use that. I filed for divorce that week, cited emotional abuse, abandonment, and constructive eviction. I asked for full ownership of the house, which was already mine, spousal support, full custody of our daughter when she was born, and child support. I also filed a police report about the illegal eviction. Got it on the record. Then, Marcus filed the emergency motion, requesting immediate access to my property and an order forcing Ryan to vacate within 24 hours. The hearing was scheduled for Friday, 1 week after he'd kicked me out. During that week, Ryan's lawyer contacted mine. His name was Robert Harrison, apparently expensive. Robert called Jennifer. My client is willing to discuss terms. Perhaps we can avoid court. Jennifer laughed. What terms? Robert said, my client will agree to let Mrs. Carter return to her own home if she drops the divorce proceedings and agrees to counseling. Jennifer laughed. Your client will agree to let her return to her own home? That's generous. Tell your client we'll see him in court. Robert said, you should know, my client intends to fight for the house. He's lived there for 4 years. He's contributed financially. He has a reasonable expectation of shared ownership through the marriage. Jennifer Morrison said, is his name on the deed? No, Your Honor, but is his name on the mortgage? No, but has he paid any of the mortgage, property taxes, or insurance? He's paid rent to his wife. So he's been a tenant in her house. Robert paused. Your Honor, the dynamics of a marriage— Jennifer Morrison cut him off. Counselor, the dynamics of a marriage don't override property law. This house belongs to Mrs. Carter. Your client has no legal claim to it. And he kicked her out while she was pregnant with his child. That's unconscionable. She turned to Ryan. Mr. Carter, did you kick your pregnant wife out of her own house? Ryan said, Your Honor, I was told— Jennifer Morrison said, yes or no? Ryan said quietly, yes. Jennifer Morrison looked at the paperwork in front of her. Then she looked up at Ryan with an expression of complete disgust. She said, Mr. Carter, I've been on the bench for 20 years. I've seen a lot of things, but this is spectacular in its stupidity. Ryan's lawyer tried to interject. Your Honor. She held up her hand. I'm not done. Mr. Carter, you lived in your wife's house for 4 years. You never bothered to check whose name was on the deed. You never bothered to confirm ownership. You just assumed, because you're a man, I'm guessing, that the house must be yours. Ryan said nothing. Jennifer Morrison continued. Then, based on what appears to be manipulation from your mother, you accused your pregnant wife of being a gold digger. You accused her of trapping you. You threw her out of her own property while she was 6 months pregnant. Have I got that right? Ryan said, Your Honor, my mother had concerns. I don't care about your mother's concerns. Your mother doesn't own this house. You don't own this house. Your wife owns this house. And you committed an illegal eviction against a pregnant woman. She looked at her notes. Mrs. Carter has paid 100% of the mortgage for 5 years. That's approximately $108,000 in mortgage payments, plus down payment, plus property taxes, plus insurance. She has invested over $200,000 into this property. You've paid her $800 a month, which totals approximately $38,000 over 4 years. That's rent, not ownership. Jennifer Morrison signed the order. Effective immediately, Mr. Carter, you have 24 hours to vacate the property located at— She read my address. You are to take only your personal belongings. Everything else belongs to Mrs. Carter. You are not to damage, destroy, or remove any property belonging to her. She looked at Patricia, sitting behind Ryan. Ma'am, I assume you're the mother. Patricia stood. Yes, Your Honor, and I'd like to say, I didn't ask you a question. Sit down. Patricia sat, face red. Jennifer Morrison continued. Mr. Carter, you are ordered to pay Mrs. Carter's attorney fees for this motion. That's $8,000. You created this mess. You're paying to clean it up. She looked at Jennifer. Counselor, I assume divorce proceedings are ongoing. Jennifer stood. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Make sure your client gets everything she's entitled to. Mr. Carter here has demonstrated remarkably poor judgment. Jennifer Morrison looked at me. Her expression softened slightly. Mrs. Carter, I'm sorry you're going through this while pregnant. You handled this the right way. You documented everything. You followed the law. The property is yours. You'll have access as of today. She banged her gavel. 24 hours, Mr. Carter. If you're not out, the police will remove you. Court adjourned. Ryan stood there looking shell-shocked. Patricia was furious, whispering urgently to him. I walked past them with my head high. Didn't say a word. Outside the courthouse, Marcus said, That went better than I expected. Jennifer said, Judge Morrison doesn't play. She saw exactly what this was. I said, When can I go home? Marcus said, Right now if you want. The order is effective immediately. I'll escort you if you'd like. Make sure there's no trouble. We drove to my house, together. Marcus, Jennifer, and I followed in her car. Jamie followed in her car. We pulled up. Ryan's car was in the driveway. We walked to the door. I used my key. It still worked. Inside, Ryan was on the phone, probably with his mother. He looked up, startled. Marcus said, Mr. Carter, I'm Marcus Williams, Mrs. Carter's attorney. Judge Morrison's order is effective immediately. You have 24 hours to remove your belongings. Ryan said, You can't just come in here. This is Mrs. Carter's house. She can enter her own property whenever she wants. You have 24 hours. I walked through my house. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, except for the nursery we'd started. Half-painted, crib pieces scattered on the floor, abandoned. I went to the bedroom, started packing Ryan's things, his clothes, his toiletries, everything that was his. He stood in the doorway. Megan, we need to talk. I said, No, we don't. You have 24 hours. I suggest you start packing. He said, I didn't know about the house. I thought... You thought wrong about a lot of things. Now leave. Patricia showed up an hour later, started screaming at me. You tricked my son. You never told him this was your house. I said calmly, I bought this house 3 years before I met Ryan. It was always my house. He never asked, he just assumed. You're a liar, a manipulator. Marcus stepped in. Ma'am, you need to leave. You're trespassing. Patricia turned to Ryan. Are you going to let them talk to me like this in your house? Ryan said quietly, Mom, it's not my house. It never was. Patricia looked at him like he'd betrayed her. What? Ryan said, She bought this house before he met me. It's hers. You were wrong about everything. I almost felt sorry for him in that moment. Almost. The realization on his face that he'd destroyed his marriage for nothing. Patricia left, furious. Ryan finished packing. Before he left, he tried one more time. Megan, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we... I said, no. You chose your mother over me, over our daughter. You called me a gold digger when I was paying for everything. You threw me out of my own house while I was 6 months pregnant. There's no coming back from that. He left. I stood in my house, and cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from vindication, from finally being home. That was 3 months ago. I'm 32 weeks pregnant now, getting close. Lily will be here in about 8 weeks. The divorce is almost finalized. Ryan gets supervised visitation with Lily when she's born. I get full custody. He pays child support based on his income, about $1,200 a month. He's living with Patricia now, in her house. I don't know if he's finally seeing who she really is, or if she's still controlling him.
I don't care anymore. I've turned the half-finished nursery into the most beautiful room in the house. Soft yellows and greens, a crib I assembled myself, bookshelves full of children's books. Everything is ready for my daughter. My daughter, who will grow up knowing her mother owned her own house at 24. She paid her own mortgage, she built her own security, who didn't need a man to provide for her. My daughter, who will know that when someone tries to take